As the seasons flowed through their village like the gentle stream that kissed the earth, the father's heart swelled with both pride and an unshakable worry, weaving an invisible thread that tethered him to his daughter. He watched her blossom into a young woman, her laughter ringing like chimes in the soft evening breeze. In her youthful vibrance, she carried his hope, yet he often pondered the shadows that crept beyond the edges of their idyllic life, casting doubt upon their joy. One evening, as the golden sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the father decided to share with his daughter a tale far different from those of heroes and mythical beasts. This story came from the depths of his own past, buried under the weight of memories, a cautionary tale spun from grief and realization. Once, not so far from here, he began, his voice steady yet laced with a tremor, there lived a young girl much like you, whose beauty shone as bright as the stars. She was cherished by her father, much like you are to me. Yet, one fateful day, her curiosity led her into the heart of the forest. Despite her father's warnings, she wandered farther than she had ever dared. His daughter sat quietly, her curiosity piqued, though shadows crossed her face as she glimpsed the sorrow in her father's eyes. "And what happened, father?" she urged gently, sensing the weight of the tale nearing its climax. He inhaled deeply, as if gathering strength from the cool evening air. That young girl, enchanted by the allure of the unseen, stumbled upon a sinister spirit who roamed the woods at dusk. Its eyes glowed with a malicious flicker, and with a single touch, it took her life, leaving her father in despair. He searched for her tirelessly, through the treacherous paths of the forest, calling her name until his voice grew hoarse. But dusk turned to night, and the stars bore witness to his torment. The father paused, allowing the gravity of his words to settle upon them like the weight of the gathering night. His daughter leaned in closer, her eyes wide with realization. "Did he not find her?" she whispered, her heart aching for the father in his story. The man's brow furrowed, a tear escaping from the corner of his eye. He did not, and his heart turned to stone with grief. He realized that love, while a beautiful force, could be a double-edged sword when clung to too tightly. In his longing to protect her, he had overlooked the thin line between freedom and risk. His fear transformed into a haunting specter, one that haunted the forests forevermore. In that moment, his daughter understood the depths of her father's love, the lengths to which it could stretch, but also the burden it could carry. The story lingered between them, a testament to the fragility of their bond, illuminating the beauty of love intertwined with the pain of loss. She reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly as the stars began to twinkle above, whispering promises of safety within the embrace of their love. The villagers gathered around the great oak, its gnarled branches stretching toward the gray sky like twisted fingers searching for solace. The weight of the prophecy hung heavily in the air, an invisible shroud that seemed to wrap around every heart. As whispers of anxiety weaved throughout the crowd, faces reflected worry and fear. Yet the father felt an unsettling tension that coursed through him like a chilling wind. He knew that mere words were not enough. Action was required, and the time to act was slipping away. In the dim light of the approaching dusk, he felt the weight of his responsibility. His daughter, with her bright laughter and spark of curiosity, was his fierce motivation. Every tale she had shared with him, every moment they had spent together, now reverberated in his mind, amplifying his urgency. He watched as children played near the cobblestone paths, their innocence untouched by the dark words of the elders. He felt a bittersweet pang of nostalgia, for he wanted to protect that innocence at any cost. The marketplace, once a vibrant tapestry of sounds and colors, now felt muted. Merchants sold their wares in hurried tones, casting anxious glances toward the horizon. The father noted the way fear crept into even the simplest interactions. He overheard a conversation that struck a chilling chord. "They say the lights may flicker out," an old woman said, her voice trembling as if nature itself would listen. "We must be ready, prepare for the worst." He clenched his fists, feeling the urgency shift into a fierce determination. That night, while the stars flickered dimly overhead, he built a small fire in their yard, its flames a comforting glow against the encroaching darkness. His daughter sat beside him, her hopeful eyes reflecting the flames. She spoke of dreams and adventures, of a world that was yet to come, and he marveled at her youth, how naivety danced so freely around her. Yet, with each laugh she shared, his heart sank deeper into shadows of dread. He needed to prepare her for the looming threat. He needed to teach her about strength. "My love," he said, breaking the gentle rhythm of her story, "there are lessons we must learn now, together." She looked up at him with an innocent curiosity that tugged at his heart. Each word he chose felt heavy, coated with the urgency of what lay ahead. "In these times, we must be brave. Darkness comes not just from without, but sometimes from within ourselves. There's a strength in kindness, and even in our despair, we can find ways to shine." As night's deep embrace surrounded them, he began to teach her about resilience, the importance of holding on to hope even when everything seems lost. It was more than a lesson. It was an unspoken pact between them, a shared understanding that whatever darkness lay in wait, they would face it together. He instilled in her the values he believed the village needed to reclaim: trust, courage, and the enduring light of the spirit. In that moment, bound by the flickering firelight, the father vowed to cultivate a sense of empowerment within her. Whatever was to come, she would not be a victim of fate, nor would she walk the path of despair alone. The flickering flames danced higher, casting shadows that flickered behind them. The father took a deep breath, fortified by the determination that surged through him. He would protect her and their home, even against the shadows that whispered of a calamity yet to unfold. As he approached the healer's dwelling, the air thickened with the scent of herbs and earth, mingling into a heady aroma that felt both familiar and foreign. The path to her cave was overgrown with vegetation, twisting and turning below the thick canopy of ancient trees, their branches heavy with the weight of untold stories. Amidst the rustle of leaves, the farmer could almost hear whispers of those who had come before him, seeking solace in the ancient knowledge that resided within these woods. Yet, he felt the chill of dread curl around his heart like creeping ivy. The urgency of his quest was suffocating. At the entrance, a tangle of roots stretched outward as if guarding the secretive healer from the world outside. She emerged from the shadows, her silhouette framed by flickering candlelight. Deep-set wrinkles lined her face, each one a testament to a life filled with both joy and sorrow. The fissures told of countless days spent weaving spells and brewing remedies, accumulating the wisdom of centuries. Her silver hair flowed like the sheen of moonlight across her shoulders, and as her intense gaze met his, he felt a shiver run down his spine. A powerful presence that brooked no argument. "I know why you've come, Father," she spoke, her voice rasping like leaves in the wind. The torment of a parent is a weighty burden, particularly when the threat to a child looms so large. He found comfort in her words, yet despair followed in their wake. He could see them, those visions of the horror his daughter faced, the darkness that seeped into their lives like an insidious fog, tendrils of fear wrapping around their hearts. With a nod, he shared his plea. "You alone can save her, wise one. Tell me what I must do." The ancient healer considered him, her eyes narrowing with each passing moment, gauging the depths of his desperation. "I can offer protection, but it comes with a cost that may be beyond your reckoning," she warned, her voice low and grave. "What is it you desire?" he asked, the weight of his daughter's potential fate urging him to press on. The healer's gaze shifted, glancing over the assortment of jars and tools that surrounded her, many filled with mysterious concoctions that glimmered in the candlelight. "The ritual requires something personal, a piece of your very essence, your blood. Sacrifice is the currency in which magic is traded. Your bond with your daughter is the source of power I will need to weave this spell." The father held his breath, the weight of her words settling heavily upon him. Could he truly sever a part of himself for her protection? The decision loomed before him, a chasm filled with both fear and fierce resolve. He knew instinctively that this was a path lined with uncertainty, yet every instinct within him screamed for him to protect his child at any cost. The healer's expression softened, sensing the turmoil within him. "Your love is a potent force. It can either empower the spell to shield her or shatter it completely." With the flickering flames as the only witness, he straightened his trembling hands, determination igniting in his chest. "I will do it," he declared, the vow ringing clear and fierce. The healer nodded solemnly, an enigmatic smile touching her lips. Together, they would dance on the precipice of sacrifice and hope, forging a bond stronger than any shadow seeking to claim his daughter. As the last remnants of daylight faded, the father stood at the precipice of a decision that threatened to unravel the very core of his being. He had journeyed through the dense woods toward the clearing where whispers of the ritual had led him, half convinced he'd find answers that would soothe his racing heart. Instead, the truth met him with the weight of a cold steel blade. The elders had spoken in cryptic phrases, warnings shrouded in shadows. But tonight, their meaning crystallized with a terrifying clarity. He was to offer not just an object or a token. He was to sacrifice a fragment of his soul, an offering that would tether his essence to the life of his beloved daughter, binding them inextricably. Images of her laughter, her innocent eyes glimmering with joy, flickered through his mind, and he felt the warm swell of paternal love battling fiercely against a haunting fear. As he contemplated the implications of such a choice, every heartbeat echoed a relentless drum, a reminder of the urgency that drove him here. In the solitude of the quickly darkening woods, he could almost hear the distant sounds of her breathing, feel her small hand clasped in his own. The thought alone ignited an inner storm, one that tore through his resolve. "What good is safety if it costs you your spirit?" a small voice muttered faintly within him. Yet as the painful tremor of uncertainty coursed through his veins, he dismissed the thought. The stakes were too high. If this sacrifice held even a flicker of hope, for protecting her, how could he turn away? The ritual required not just a piece of his soul, but a symbolic gesture that twisted through the fabric of life and death. He recalled stories of those who had come before him, dads, mothers, all willing to plunge into the abyss for the sake of their children. Their names echoed in the trees, each one a testament to the anguish and love that intersected in the most grotesque dance. Old legends ignited memories, tales thick with devastation and resolve, mingled in a morose symphony. How much of the self could one lose before the entirety fades into darkness? He grappled with the question as the wind rustled ominously through the branches overhead. There would be a price, a gnawing emptiness that could embolden shadows lingering within his heart. Yet he believed that the void could be filled with the strength of his love, a fortification erected against the perils surrounding her. His heart surged with unconventional valor as he envisioned his daughter's sweet smile, a beacon guiding him through turmoil and dread. He gritted his teeth against the doubt that gnawed at him, reminded by memories of her tiny hands exploring the world with wonder, unfettered by the weight of protective burdens. For her, he whispered hoarsely into the gloom, renewed determination tethering him to the path he must tread. With each step closer to the sacred ground, the father understood that love's essence was more than the physical. It sprawled into a realm where sacrifice and salvation collided. Tonight, he would weave their destinies together through pain, a brutal act propelled by a fierce devotion. And as the darkness embraced him, he steeled himself, prepared to embrace the cost of protection. With each incantation whispered into the shadowy night, the air crackled with an intensity that felt more alive than he had ever experienced. The circle of salt, a barrier of protection and intent, began to gleam with a faint luminescence, casting flickering shadows that danced upon the ancient trunk surrounding him. The forest, dense and alive, seemed to hold its breath, the whispering wind carrying with it the echoes of old magic, long forgotten, yet embedded deep within the roots of the earth. His heart pounded in his chest, synchronized with the rhythmic chant he had learned years ago from the tattered pages of his grandmother's grimoire. Each syllable flowed like water, a mixture of desperation and hope intertwined in the chorus. As he spoke, memories of his daughter played like a film in his mind. Her first steps taken in the grass, her laughter filling the spaces of their humble home, the way her eyes sparkled with curiosity. Those moments were now his guiding stars, lighting the path through the shadows. He grasped the photograph tighter, feeling the warmth of her vibrant spirit trapped within the glossy paper. The forest felt alive, resonating with a power that pulled at the very marrow of his bones. But, alongside that energy, a thread of unease began to weave through the tranquil stillness. It was a whisper in the back of his mind, a gentle warning that perhaps this path he walked was fraught with dangers he could not yet comprehend. Yet, there was no turning back. He had come too far, felt too much pain. His resolve steeled, and he pushed deeper into the incantation. As his voice crescendoed, the shadows around him began to warp and twist, coiling like smoke against the backdrop of towering pines. He could feel the powerful forces he had called forth stirring, a blend of ancient spirits waking from their slumber, their presence tangible now, thickening the air around him. The sensation frayed at his edges, the veil between realms thinning, allowing glimpses into secrets long buried beneath the earth. He closed his eyes, letting the sensation wash over him, trying to attune himself to the vibrations of the gathering spirits. From somewhere beyond the realm of sight, a low hum resonated, harmonizing with the rhythmic pulse of his heart. It became a song, a haunting melody of longing that felt achingly familiar. The very land beneath him seemed to respond, vibrating gently in reply to the call he had made. A shiver skittered down his spine, a delightful mix of dread and anticipation. The ritual he had set into motion teetered on a precipice of wonder and terror, and he was right in the eye of the storm, standing firm yet acutely aware of the thin line he tread. Then came a sudden gust of wind, swirling through the clearing, blowing leaves into a frenzied dance around him. The energy peaked, a surge that pulled at him, beckoning him to delve deeper, to demand more from the spirits that lingered just beyond the circle. The moment stretched into eternity, the essence of his daughter mingling with the ethereal power he invoked. He inhaled sharply, summoning every ounce of courage as he called out her name, letting the urgency of his plea ring clear through the chilled night air. His heart thundered in his chest as the radiant light enveloped him, erasing the familiar contours of the dimly lit chamber. It was as if time itself had paused, allowing the weight of his choices to settle like a palpable fog around his consciousness. Memories of laughter-filled afternoons and soft, tender moments with his daughter cascaded through his mind, each one a reminder of innocence at stake. As the brilliance faded, a clarity took its place, sharper than any blade. He was poised at the edge of a precipice, prepared to plunge into the abyss for her sake. Though the world around him seemed to dissolve into a kaleidoscope of color, he felt rooted in his purpose. The ritual demanded sacrifice, And, despite the overwhelming sense of dread gnawing at his resolve, the image of her bright, trusting eyes urged him forward. They had gazed up at him with such unwavering faith, believing he could shield her from the terrors that plagued their existence, terrors that now clawed at the periphery of their lives like shadows long unacknowledged. As he grappled with his fears, a whispered memory resurfaced. The night he had first held her in his arms, fragile and perfect. She had been a beacon of hope amidst a world steeped in turmoil. Could he truly offer his essence, his very being, as a means of protecting that light? The thought seized him, a hand tightening around his throat. Was he prepared for the weight of such a transformation? The gathering shadows, beyond the ritual circle, felt alive, perhaps sentient, as if they were aware of his doubts, feeding off them, swirling with impatience. Each moment stretched like a taut string, vibrating with the urgency of choices yet unmade. He could feel the draw of their dark forces, whispering insidious promises of power and vengeance, calling him to abandon this path of selflessness. But with each insidious murmur, guilt wrestled fiercely within him. He thought of his daughter's laughter, a melody woven into the very fabric of his life, and the promises he had made to always protect her. The air thickened with anticipation, the energy shifting as he settled deeper into the realization that this was not merely about him. The weight of the world pressed against him, but the thought of her facing the approaching darkness alone steadied his resolve. He envisioned her growing up under cracked skies and cloaked shadows, deprived of the joy that should accompany childhood. The sacrifice of his essence became less an act of desperation and more a fierce declaration of paternal love. With a heavy breath, he reached out, letting his fingers dance along the edge of the symbol, now glowing fiercely in the center of the chamber. It pulsed with life, an echo of the very spirit he sought to defend. He realized he was not yielding to the darkness. He was forging a barrier against it, a final stand against the encroaching chaos that threatened to consume not just him, but everything he held dear. As the last lingering doubt flickered and died within him, he made his choice. For her, for the very core of what was worth fighting for, he would delve into the light that beckoned, ready to embrace whatever fate awaited him. The echo of the final chant faded into the night air, swallowed by the thick canopy that loomed overhead. The moon, a silent witness to the act that had unfolded, cast an ethereal glow on the forest floor, illuminating the path the father now tread. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of the world had transformed into a tangible burden, pressing down on his shoulders. He knew he had made the right choice, yet an unshakable dread gnawed at the corners of his soul. As he walked, the familiar sensations of the forest began to shift. The rustle of leaves no longer felt comforting. It was a cacophony of whispers from ancient spirits, reminding him of the innocence he had sacrificed. The joyous laughter of his daughter played like a haunting melody in his mind. He could almost see her bright smile reflected in the moonlight, and it pierced him deeper than any blade could. Each joyous recollection twisted into something darker. Memories that once radiated warmth now felt like shards of ice slicing through his heart. Reaching the edge of the village, he paused beneath the great oak that stood vigil at the entrance. It had witnessed countless seasons, celebrating births and mourning losses alongside the community. The village lights flickered, warmly in the distance, drawing him toward their embrace. Yet he felt an invisible barrier between himself and the laughter that spilled from the homes, a chasm carved by his own hand. The safety he had fought so fiercely to maintain now felt like a cruel trick, a facade that he was desperately trying to believe in. As the door creaked open, the familiar sense of home washed over him. The aroma of freshly baked bread, the faint sweetness of wildflowers that adorned the mantel, and the warm static of family life brimming within these walls. Yet, as he stepped inside, it felt like walking further into a stranger's life, His wife looked up from her tasks, her face brightening with a smile that held no hint of the darkness he carried. "You're home!" she exclaimed, her voice a melodic balm to his frayed nerves. But he could barely return the sentiment, his heart heavy with unspoken truths. He forced a smile, feeling the effort stretch across his face like an ill-fitting mask. It was a deception, he knew, but there was no space within him for the tumult that raged beneath the surface. His daughter came bounding into the room, her laughter ringing like silver bells. Yet with each giggle, he felt the echo of that final incantation linger, a reminder of the price he had paid. She wrapped her tiny arms around his waist, her innocence a tether that made him feel both anchored and adrift at once. "Papa, tell me a story," she chirped, her eyes sparkling with eagerness. The command sliced through his heart, a simple request that should have invoked tenderness but instead unearthed a storm of conflicted emotions. He opened his mouth, and the words came forth, tales of heroes and fantastical creatures. But the meaning shifted, and soon these stories felt like a darker fabric woven from the consequence of his choice, rich with loss, yet devoid of true joy. Time seemed to stretch and bend around him, and as laughter filled the air, he wondered how long he could keep this illusion alive. Each joyful moment felt like a dagger, twisting deeper, and a flicker of panic welled up within him. The safety of the village was preserved, but the sanctity of their bond teetered precariously on the edge of an unseen abyss. He was a father who'd become both protector and prisoner, walled in by his own decisions, spiraling gently into the chilling void that now defined him. As the father stood at the edge of the garden, he felt an uneasy tightness in his chest. His daughter, Lily, glided across the sun-dappled grass, her laughter soaring with the birds that flitted overhead. Yet, each melodious note seemed to resonate with an undercurrent of sorrow, a reminder of the years lost to silence. This once bright space, now filled with giggles and squeals, felt like an echo of what used to be, a memory of innocence tinged by an inescapable shadow. Lily's friends, bustling with enthusiasm, painted a picture of carefree joy, but the father noticed the subtle changes in their dynamics. They drew closer around her, eyes wide, whispering secrets that seemed just out of reach of his understanding. It was as if they shared a collective awareness, a knowledge that danced just beyond the threshold of his comprehension. When one of her friends glanced his way, their eyes flickered with something akin to sympathy, and it sent a shiver racing down his spine. He was an outsider in his own life, a spectator to the unfolding tale of a child whose laughter should have been pure and untainted. It struck him that although Lily wore a bright smile, there was an imperceptible flicker of worry in her gaze, an unsettling prescience that hinted at burdens too heavy for her small shoulders. She would pause for brief moments, her expression reflective, as if grappling with thoughts that were never meant to fray her innocence. It reminded him too vividly of the gaps in their conversations, the silences that had lingered longer than they should. He often found himself hesitating to ask the wrong questions, fearing the fragile balance they had fought so hard to reclaim might shatter into irreparable fragments. As the afternoon sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the world in shades of gold, the laughter grew more frenetic, unfurling like the petals of the flowers that surrounded them. Yet, even in this vibrant setting, there was a chill in the air. He felt the world narrowing, pulling him into an uncomfortable reckoning. He longed to reach out, to understand the thoughts swirling behind her bright eyes, but something held him back, an instinctual wisdom that some truths could be more harmful than ignorance. Lily suddenly locked eyes with him and held his gaze for a moment longer than usual. In that fleeting second, he saw it. The flicker of an unsaid wish, a plea buried amidst the joy of childhood play. Just as quickly, she broke the connection, returning to her friends, laughter spilling out as easily as the sunlight spilled over the lawn. But the sigh, Shadows loomed larger now. The father's heart ached with a foreboding sense that the vulnerability he sensed in his daughter was not just a figment of his fears. There was a truth hidden beneath their laughter, a truth that felt like an unexpected twist in their story, one he was not yet ready to confront. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the dimly lit room, the atmosphere pulsed with unspoken emotions. The father, his heart heavy with the weight of untold truths, scanned the contours of his daughter's face, seeking the courage to breach the chasm of silence that had stretched between them for too long. It wasn't just the burden of secrets that pressed upon him. It was the ache of knowing that his shield of protection had, in its own way, erected walls instead of safety. "Can we talk?" he finally asked, his voice thin, almost foreign to his own ears. She looked up, her wide eyes reflecting a blend of curiosity and concern, sensing the gravity in his tone. It was the first step into a new chapter of understanding, one that had been long overdue. She nodded, setting aside her book, the pages still warm from where her fingers had lingered. He gestured for her to sit on the worn-out couch, a silent invitation to surrender to the weight of the moment. As he took his place across from her, he felt the echoes of their shared history reverberate in the air, a tapestry woven with laughter, tears, and the silent struggles that had shaped them both. "Do you remember when you asked me why we never talked about the past?" he began, his resolve faltering slightly as the memories flooded back. She nodded again, a small gesture, but one that carried the weight of their histories. "I avoided it because I thought keeping you safe meant shielding you from the darkness. But," his voice trembled, the confession clinging to the edges of his resolve, "it wasn't just to protect you. It was to protect myself from reliving the pain." A flicker of realization crossed her face, a knowing look that told him she understood more than he had anticipated. She had felt the shadows lurking behind his smile, an unspoken knowledge that had hung between them like a tempest waiting to break. "Tell me," she urged gently, her words a balm to his frayed nerves. With a deep breath, he unveiled the story that had haunted him for years. The sacrifices made in silence, the choices that had seemed like the only option at the time, yet had etched scars on his soul. He spoke of nights spent sleepless, of choices anchored in desperation, of the lengths to which he had gone to shield her from a reality far grimmer than she could imagine. Each word felt like a relinquishing of chains that had bound him, and he watched as the understanding dawned in her eyes. Then, to his surprise, her expression shifted from sympathy to something deeper, an empathy resonating from a place he had not expected. "I sensed the darkness, Dad. I felt it when you pulled away, when you tried to shelter me from all of it. It made me feel alone," she confessed, her voice firm yet gentle. In that moment, they stood on the precipice of a new understanding, an acknowledgement that love could be a shared burden, not merely the act of protecting. In the silence that followed, he realized that the gap between them was beginning to close, that their bond was no longer tethered solely by fear. Love, he understood, was not just a shield. It was a light illuminating the path of honesty. Together, they could navigate the shadows he had tried so desperately to conquer alone, and with that, a new hope flickered within him. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but it would also be rich in connection, the kind forged in truth and mutual understanding. The path to healing unfurled before them like a tapestry woven with threads of shared memories and whispered prayers. With each step, the father and daughter felt the weight of their past lifting, revealing the promise of new beginnings. They ventured deeper into the forest, the familiar sense of pine and damp earth grounding them in the present, away from the shadows that had threatened to consume them. The air was infused with a subtle magic, as if the universe conspired to guide them toward the healer who had once transformed their lives. As they approached the clearing where the healer resided, they saw the soft glow of candles flickering in the twilight, reflecting off the healer's humble abode. The tender light mirrored the warmth blossoming in their hearts, a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. Each of them carried their own scars, remnants of a ritual that had sought to bind their destinies through pain rather than love. But now, they sought to reclaim their power, to reclaim their connection, and to cleanse the remnants of that ritual that lingered like a chill in the air. When they finally arrived, the healer welcomed them with open arms, her eyes twinkling with understanding. She had witnessed many souls seeking redemption, and she recognized the bond between the father and daughter as something sacred and rare. With gentle encouragement, she invited them to sit in a circle of salt, a protective barrier grounded in tradition and intention. They were encouraged to share their stories, to lay bare their vulnerabilities, and in doing so, to embrace the healing process together. In that sacred space, the father spoke of the guilt that had tormented him for far too long. Each word escaped like a breath held too long, revealing the shame that had clouded his heart. The daughter listened intently, her eyes glistening with unshed tears as she recognized the pain echoed in her own heart. She revealed her fears, the echoes of their estrangement resonating within her, and how it had molded her view of love itself. With each revelation, the shadows of the past began to dissolve, swept away by the light of their shared truths. The healer guided them through a ritual of release, invoking a cleansing of their spirits through herbal smoke and melodic chants. As the aromatic tendrils encircled them, the father and daughter found themselves clasping hands tightly, feeling the resonance of their hearts beating in tandem. In that moment, it was no longer just about the scars left by past decisions. It became a journey toward reclamation, toward forgiveness, and toward understanding that their pain, however deep, would no longer be carried alone. As the last notes of the healer's song faded into the night, they felt a profound sense of renewal wash over them. A warmth ignited between them, a fierce love that transcended their mistakes, a love that promised growth. They stood united, a father and daughter reborn, the sun casting its final rays upon them, igniting their silhouettes against the canvas of the dimming sky. In that moment, they knew that together, they could navigate the remnants of the past and pave the way for a future bright, with hope and understanding.